presenters who have a great deal of information. I'm Billie Jo Kaufman, the Director of the Law Library at Nova Southeastern University and Associate Professor of Law. The Virtual Reference Desk is really a relatively new term, and because we're at a technology conference, I want to share with you a book, Going Live, Starting and Running a Virtual Reference System. And this book has a great bibliography, nice checklist, and is really a really good Bible that was published just this year, 2003, by the American Library Association. This afternoon, our presenters include Lisa Smith-Butler, the Associate Law Library Director at Nova Southeastern University; Tracy Thompson, the Executive Director of the New England Law Library Consortium. She's the coordinator of Library LAWLINE, collaborator of law libraries using 24/7 to provide virtual reference to patrons. They're in the middle of a 9-month pilot program that started in September 2002 with 20 libraries participating, and they're moving from that pilot to a permanent system with 12 libraries participating. Herb Siak is the Associate Vice Chancellor for the Library and Information Technology and Professor of Law at the Louisiana State University Paul M. Herbert Law Center. His school is working with software program Live Assistance, and their involvement has been to create a digital reference committee examining software issues and everything that goes into adopting such a program. Roy Balliste is the Faculty Services Librarian at St. Thomas University Law Library, and Roy and his staff at St. Thomas have worked with Nova Southeastern University and created a virtual reference desk using Convey Systems. Our final presenter is Gordon Russell, the Director of the Law Library and Associate Professor of Law at St. Thomas, and he will also be entertaining questions. Lisa.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. As you can tell, we do have a lot of people, so I'm going to go quickly and talk fast. Today we're going to talk about, I'm going to give you a brief overview, and everyone else will give you more in depth. We're going to ask that you hold questions until the end. I'm going to talk about what virtual reference is, why you would do virtual reference, who's doing it, and how you do it. Virtual reference has been called 24/7, eDesk, Ask a Librarian, Digital Reference, Virtual Reference, Live Chat. So you've probably heard of it by a lot of names. The U.S. Department of Education has created a virtual reference desk network, and they define virtual reference desk as internet-based question and answer services that connect users with experts and subject expertise. They further define it as using the internet to connect people with people who can answer questions and support the development of skills. And that's what we're all looking for when we're using the virtual reference desk, hooking up with somebody who can help us find the answer to our question. It's a very nice site. Billie Jo Kaufman in Law Librarians in the New Millennium describes the virtual reference as any reference service that takes place when either the librarian or the patron or both are at a location other than the physical reference desk. So that's what virtual reference is defined as. Why would you do it? Students nowadays, a lot of them prefer the anonymity, the comfort, and the convenience of doing virtual reference. Rather than having to come to the reference desk, call the reference desk, they would rather just interact directly over the internet. You may have distance programs. For instance, we have a clinic for seniors, and they can go their last semester anywhere in the country, in the world, where they can find a placement that suits, and they attend classes through video conferencing. They get their library needs, their research needs met through the virtual reference desk. You would also want to do virtual reference because a lot of our materials are becoming available in electronic format. So this is the perfect format to showcase the new electronic products and show students how to use some of these things. You can also assist patrons with learning how to use various softwares, email, word processing, and so forth. So that's why you do virtual reference. Who's doing virtual reference? A lot more academic libraries. Cornell's University's libraries, Ohio State University, UCLA, University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, Berkeley, Texas, Michigan, Indiana, Bloomington, Wisconsin, the University of Washington. Right now, academic law libraries that are using virtual reference desk, Cornell University's Gateway, the Paul M. Herbert Law Center, Louisiana State University, Nova Southeastern University, St. Thomas University, and NELCO, the New England Law Library Consortium, which Tracy's going to tell you about, is working on a pilot project, and they're going to have their 19 members using 24/7 called LAWLINE. Taking a look at all of the screens, if you wanted to log on as a patron, here's what Cornell's looks like. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see Ask a Librarian, email, chat, phone. Louisiana's announces their service, new live chat reference services. You just click on the icon. At Nova, we call ours Ask a Law Librarian. You just click on this. And at St. Thomas, they tell you about it with their new online chat service. NELCO's Law Library LAWLINE. In terms of vendors, who's doing virtual reference? You have several choices: 24/7, Convey, Docutech, eLibrarian, LSSI, Live Assistance, Live Helper, and Live Person. Lots of things need to go into setting up a virtual reference desk. First of all, you're going to have to interview, and then you're going to have to hire a vendor. You're going to have to figure out how you're going to staff it. You're going to have to decide on the parameters of the service that you're going to offer. You're going to have the vendors train your librarians. Then your librarians are going to need to practice. And then you're going to need to market the software and the service to your patrons and make sure they know how to use it and start motivating them to use it. When you select a vendor, some of the things you want to consider is you want to make sure that they have easy-to-use software, intuitive, easy to understand, easy to get around. You want to make sure your vendor is going to be there and be able to provide you with the appropriate support, either by telephone or coming in for training, whatever, but you want to make sure you have vendor support. You also want to make sure cost, something you need to be able to afford, and the cost is very reasonable. You probably should consider co-browsing capabilities so that you can push web pages, as well as application sharing features, and a chat box for both the patron and the librarian. When you're looking at staffing the desk, you want to know how many hours you're going to staff it. If you already have email reference desk, are you going to discontinue it? Are you going to allow it to coexist? How are you going to handle that? How are you going to handle staffing it? Are you going to have the person who actually sits at the reference desk handle the virtual reference desk at first, or will you assign another staff member to do that in their office? What patrons will you serve? Are you going to limit the virtual reference desk to law center faculty, students, and staff? Are you going to open it to the university or the whole world? If you're going to limit it, how are you going to enforce this? Gordon and Roy will talk about how we have done that at Nova and St. Thomas later. Then, what computers are you going to download the software on? Obviously, we decided we would do it in our computer lab, but we also have mandatory laptops, so we wanted every student to have it, so that was another place we had to do it. You're going to need to decide what types of questions you're going to answer. Will they just be factual questions? Will you provide suggestions for where you should start research, more in-depth research? So you need to decide what the parameters of your service is going to be. You need to bring the vendors in for a full day of training probably. Make sure you've loaded in all the librarians as well as the reference desk computer. And finally, you've got to make your patrons aware that you have this service. They may need to download it themselves. If so, you're going to have to make arrangements to help them download it, to answer any questions, have answer sheets, and so forth. Notifying them about it, we used blast emails to all students. We published it in our newsletter. We put up posters within the library. Here's our newsletter where we had the information and a reduced image of our poster. We used Convey. We initially routed it. It went to the server in North Carolina. That took a long time, so we loaded it on our server. That is the one thing I will say you will discover. There is dead time. So, and it truly is, I guess, like radio and TV. There is dead time, so you have to get comfortable with that and become a very fast, efficient typist. We chose Convey. It allows us to do URL sharing. It has application sharing. And it also has chat boxes. And I've got a few screens I want to show you. When I log on, here's my Convey icon. I'm prompted for my password. And then you'll see this is the screen I get. And it literally, it rings just like a telephone, and to pick it up, I click on Accept Call. I have scripts prepared so that I can just insert those scripts under text chat. If I'm the patron, this is what it looks like here. They've downloaded the software, so they have a little call box in the upper right-hand corner of their screen. They click on that call box, and it starts ringing, and it tells you it's ringing. So I see my call coming in. I accept it. I do my text chat telling them, hello, my name is, and how can I help you? I send that. And the patron, as you can tell, has a box where they can key things in. They're on the top, and the reference desk, we're the little smiley face down there. So the patron can see all of this. As I'm going through, they're going to ask me, for instance, if I can give them information about Enron. I say, sure, why not? And you'll see what they see on their screen. And I need to, since I want to push a web page at them, I have to click on URL share. And I tell them what website we're going to and that I'm going to be pushing this page to their screen. And then I click on send. So here's my screen. And you can tell I'm the patron, I'm sending it to you, and I've always got the query box up here so that you can ask questions. You can also maneuver, as you can tell from this. I'm telling the patron how to go in and find bankruptcy filings. And that's pushing web pages or URL sharing. Application sharing. Let's say they ask me if they can figure out, and this is one thing, you ask what, we have not built up enough yet. We're not as busy as we hope to be. It's coming, but if you're on with someone else, this is what the patron gets. They will get, instead of a busy signal, please wait, an agent will be right with you. So they're not left dangling. So I'm telling the patron how to use the find command in email. So I have to go down here and click on my application share. You see the application share tab in the middle, and highlight that and click on send. And then I choose browser share, and from that I select email. And it always asks, when I'm using application sharing, I am taking control very briefly of the patron screen, and you ask, and they can either accept or reject. And if you start looking, You literally take over and you can walk them through something step by step. OCLC and the Library of Congress are creating, well, they did create Question Point. It became available as of June 3rd. The cost to join is $2,000. Here's what their screen looks like. Lots of information. Roy and Gordon have both authored an article that appeared in the April issue of Computers in Library. Steve Kaufman's book, Going Live, Starting and Running a Virtual Reference Desk, is wonderful. Billy Joe had an article in 1,000 Points of Reference. Question Point has a nice site. And the Virtual Reference Desk Network is wonderful as well. This PowerPoint is up at our website, www.nsu.nova.edu/library/publications. And then just scroll down to PowerPoints and you'll see it under Virtual Reference. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to switch here. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Tracy Thompson. I'm Executive Director of the New England Law Library Consortium. And before we start, I'd like to see there are a few members of NELCO who have been manning our virtual reference desk. Could you raise your hands? If you have any questions afterwards and you'd like to, you can talk to these folks about how this actually works. So our pilot ended and we started our permanent service on June 1. So I'm really sort of talking after the fact about the pilot. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why and how we chose 24/7 as our software solution. Here's a timeline of our service. Our service is called Library LAWLINE. And a little known fact, LAWLINE is actually an acronym which stands for Live Assistance with Legal Information in the Northeast. So I think that's pretty clever. But in October 2001, I attended the Virtual Reference Desk Conference in Orlando, which I would really encourage you to consider attending if you're thinking about doing virtual reference, whether you're thinking about it for a collaborative, for your patrons, or whomever. It's a really good opportunity to see all the vendors in one place, talk to people who are doing it, find out what kind of innovation is happening, and really get to the people who are in the trenches. And the people who seem to be the forerunners on this are the public libraries who are doing a lot of work in virtual reference. So this conference this year is November 17th and 18th in San Antonio, Texas. And that's on the VRD website. In October, the same month, our project was approved by the board of directors for us to move ahead with some sort of virtual reference, collaborative virtual reference project. That November, we had our annual reference liaison meeting at Fordham Law School, and I had invited Susan McGlamory from 24/7 to come and do a demo for us. So that was our first exposure as a group to the idea of virtual reference, and that was, at that point, the only software that we had looked at. At the same meeting, we started to establish our virtual reference desk task force. Some members are here today. And in the following March in 2002, that task force met for a full day. Most of my NELCO meetings are full-day meetings, and asking me to get 8 minutes worth of information is tough, so I'm trying to fly through this stuff. At that task force meeting, it was really important in developing the pilot because we had to really establish a lot of things. We looked at the framework for our service, what hours, even though the software is called 24/7, don't let that intimidate you because not very many people are actually doing 24/7, and it's even harder in a law library environment because you can't sort of farm out that reference work to general reference librarians. So we looked at things like hours and staffing. How are we going to staff this as a collaborative? We're geographically dispersed. We looked at policies. We had to obviously have a privacy policy in place, and we needed to think about service policies because we have different types of libraries in the consortium. They're law libraries, but we have both academic and state, court, and county, and social law library, which is a membership library. So we had to think about serving the needs of those patrons. And those patron bases have different expectations, and how are we going to make sure that our service on the virtual reference desk was consistent to all those patrons? At the same meeting, we evaluated 4 software solutions. Rackham or Rakim is it's a freeware that, you know, since you have a lot of technical ability in here, you can probably work with that software, and you can do a lot of customization with it, and it will do a lot of the features that you're looking for in a virtual reference software. We did look at Convey, we looked at Live Assistance, and we looked at 24/7. As we started to look at these software options, we began to develop sort of our list of preferred features. Some of these features we knew ahead of time that these were our preferred features, and some of them sort of bubbled up as we began to look at different options. Well, one of the key things we were looking for was an ASP model, because since we're a consortium and we're geographically dispersed, we don't have an IT infrastructure, we don't have any IT people at all. So we really I was concerned that we have an ASP model so that we had a go-to place when we started to have problems. We were concerned with being able to share the seats and the cost. That was the key of doing it collaboratively, was that we were going to be able to really share both the cost of it and share the risk involved in trying something new. That's one of the things that we have the advantage of doing in a consortium. We definitely wanted chat. That was the point of going to virtual reference. We wanted to be able to push pages to clients, to patrons. We didn't want to have a patron side or a client side download. We didn't want the patrons to have to download an applet or something that some people might be hesitant to load anything, and we didn't want to scare those people away, so that was key for us. I really wanted the focus to be on the service and not on the software, because at the end of the pilot, I didn't want us to have been so bogged down in glitches, you know, a lot of the software that has high-end capabilities but might end up being glitchy because the technology isn't quite there yet, and I didn't want to get bogged down in that and lose sight of, is this a service that our patrons want to have? So we were trying to balance that when we found a solution. And we wanted to make sure that the librarians who were going to participate were facing a manageable learning curve, because there's always resistance to change when you introduce something new. We didn't want that to be a boundary. We wanted that to be fairly manageable. Then we had sort of a nice but not necessary list of features, and those included escorting and co-browsing, voice over IP, application sharing, meeting functions, something like Blackboard meeting functions, or, you know, the one-to-many capability that many softwares have. And then we really liked the persistent button. Streaming video was cool, but not nice, but not necessary. These 2 features are part of Convey. Not everybody employs them, but they're there. And the persistent button feature is very nice, because then the help button for your patron appears in their browser wherever they are. Anywhere they don't have to come back to your library site and click in to get the librarian. But the problem with the persistent button is it requires the patron side download. So that's, we like those features, but they were not necessary for us. So why did we go with 24/7? It was developed for a library consortium, the Metropolitan Cooperative Library System in California. It was developed based on another software, LSSI, but it was specifically created for Library Consortium, and we like that. It provided all of our preferred features and some of the nice but not necessary features. They had a very sustainable pricing model. They were interested and willing to work with us. They were excited about what we were trying to do. Anybody who's talked to the people at 24/7, Susan McGlamory, she's very enthusiastic and very interested, and she has a lot of enthusiasm for the concept of virtual reference in libraries as a whole. So those things were appealing to us. The costs involved in setting this up as a consortium, there were some external costs and some internal costs. The external costs include a one-time setup fee that depends, with 24/7 there's a basic sort of a model, and then there's the sort of high-end model that adds the co-browsing feature, and that's a one-time fee. Then there's a training fee, which includes the travel costs of the trainers to come out. The ongoing fee is a per-seat maintenance fee that you pay depending on the number of seats that you have on the service, and you pay for each of those seats monthly. Then there are the internal costs associated with it. Promotional materials, we developed a series of bookmarks to distribute to our incoming first years or our library patrons. We developed some signs. There are training costs involved internally. If you continue to do, you have the training from the vendor initially, but you'll probably continue to do ongoing training in-house. And then if you have to upgrade your hardware to meet minimum specs, that would be another internal cost. And then the obvious internal staffing cost, the cost that is sometimes missed in having your librarian staff the service. We did two types of training. We did the full-day vendor-led sessions that 24/7 offers. The one mistake I think we made is that we trained a little too soon. We trained in June, and our launch wasn't scheduled until September. Our thinking was in June people would take the training and then they'd have all summer long to practice, and then we'd start in September. Well, people didn't practice as much as they would have liked in the summertime. It's never, the workload never seems to lighten as much as you expect. And so people got to September and had sort of forgotten, the training session. So that should have been probably closer together. Then midway through the pilot in January, well, it was actually early February, we did another series of training sessions that were sort of train the trainer. Librarians did this time, and those were really well received. At this point, the librarians who were staffing the virtual reference desk knew the questions to ask. They knew the software. They had been using it. They knew what the downsides were, and I think they got a lot more out of these train the trainer sort of midway sessions, and we may continue to do some of those. Just quickly through the patron interfaces, I mean, it looks, a lot of these have a lot of the same functionality and a lot of the same look to them. But I just wanted to give you a sense of how the patron comes to the service. We don't have any sort of authentication in place. This is intended to be open to the NELCO. Anyone who is a patron of a NELCO member who's participating is a patron that is able to use it, but we don't have any authentication in place. So if somebody comes to the site, clicks it on the link, they're going to get in. I'm just showing you Albany Law School. This is their homepage, and you can see the link to Library LAWLINE that they've put there. Here's the Connecticut Judicial Branch law libraries, and you can see I have to use this nifty. See the Library LAWLINE logo here. Again, that was something we spent a lot of time on developing the logo so that across the participating libraries' pages, it would be a consistent thing, and any patron that went from one library to another, they would recognize that as a place to get help. So that's where the patron would click in, and then they would come to this screen. All of this is customizable. On the right-hand side, you can customize what you want here and whether you want it to be required or optional information. And then you can do with this information what you want in terms of reporting. If you want to keep reports of what zip codes are we getting patrons from, you can keep that information and you'll get it in your reports. On the left-hand side here, this is just the sort of first information for the patrons. We're actually in the process of changing all that to tell them what to expect, what to do and what not to do. With 24/7, the patron can't use their browser navigation after they get in. They have to use this navigation up here now that's built into the 24/7 software. If they use the browser navigation, they'll get booted out. I think they end up having a lot of problems with that. So that's what the patron sees, and this part will be their browser. This is where they'll see the pages that you push to them, and here's where they'll see the text that you chat back and forth. Here's the text. The librarian interface is sort of similar to what we saw with Convey. Here's where they would sign in. You'd have a link or you'd bookmark this site or whatever. The librarian signs in here. They go through a few interim screens before they get to this. This is the main librarian interface screen. And you can see here, whoops. This is where the librarian sees the newest text, the chat, and here is information about this patron, what's their name, what was their question, where did they come in from, what link did they join from. You can see what browser they're using, what IP address they have. There's scripting built in, all the same features that we saw with Convey, building scripts and that kind of thing. And right down here is where you do your messaging and page pushing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. When the session is over, your patron would log out, and then they would get this survey. This, again, is totally customizable. You can capture any information that you want. More is better here if you really want to get results. And then I just want to talk a little bit about our biggest obstacles. I think one of the things we spent a lot of time on was proxy server issues on our IP restricted databases. any IP-restricted databases that our patrons have access to. We spent a lot of time thinking about the policy issues with that and the can we do this as opposed to the may we do this. And so we were looking at licensing issues as well as technical issues. Ultimately, there's sort of can we do this with the software and may we do this with the licensing. We spent a lot of time on that. Technical problems, we had a lot of freeze-ups. When you would first enter a session, your first session of the day, you would end up freezing up with a patron, so we had to develop some workarounds for that. Librarians can't use Macs. I know that is a big drawback for some. And the minimal hardware requirements, the patrons can use Macs. They can come into the service, but the librarians can't. Minimum hardware requirements might not be optimal. I think that's why we lost a lot of, during the pilot we did lose a few members, 2 or 3 people dropped out. I think they just got so frustrated getting bogged down in glitches and technical snafus that they just gave up on it and dropped. So those were the biggest obstacles. Customer support with 24/7, I have to say overall I think is pretty good. It's a small operation. Susan and Carol pretty much run the place. I think they contract out some other technical work, but Susan and Carol are there, and you can get a lot of technical support by email, phone. We developed a listserv for the library LAWLINE participants, and they monitored that listserv. And often a problem would come up, and without even contacting them, because they were monitoring the listserv, they would just reply to the listserv and tell us what how to correct the problem or whatever. So overall, I think it was a good customer support because it's small, they know you, so they're responsive to you. That's really all I have. I'd love to talk more about this. If anybody wants to contact me, here's my email, phone number. Thank you.
We've already discussed a little bit why you should get involved with the virtual reference desk. Let me just add that we were a part at LSU of the collaborative digital reference service, and then when Question Point came on, we were a beta tester of that. And that seemed like to us a natural progression to move from that type of service to a virtual reference desk. I wanted also to have us expand our customer service base. Many students are not coming into the library, and we want to reach those students. And then finally, we want to be able to figure out a way that as we move from our paper and print products to electronic media, this is a good vehicle for us to use to try and market electronic services. These are steps that we followed, similar to what's already been explained to you. I won't go over all of them with you. But at the very beginning, I tried to give to one of our librarians, the coordinator of library services, a charge and ask him to work with a committee to see if they could address a number of questions that I had about implementing a service like this. These are the questions that were asked. What additional costs would be involved in implementing a virtual reference desk? Who would our clients be? What digital reference services could we provide? When would this service be available? What personnel would be involved? And how could we evaluate or measure the success of this service? Now, this whole process took us about 9 months as we worked through it. But the committee report came back to me, and the committee said that our clients then would be law faculty, staff, and students. The service would begin after we finished the remodeling that was ongoing at our library, and we created a new reference desk. We'd have librarians and some support staff actually involved at this desk, and our ongoing effort now is to try and determine how we can measure better the success of this service. Some of these features have already been mentioned as far as what's available that you might consider when you start a virtual reference desk. And there are over 25 different services that you can choose from today. We chose a live assistance. Some of the features that we looked at as being important to us was ability to push web pages. We wanted to be able to have some satisfaction survey at the end of the process. We wanted to see if there could be created a knowledge base. We'd also like to be able to service both Windows and Mac platforms. And then cost was a big issue with us. Now, this is what the screen looks like if you come to our website at LSU. And you can see in the library section there, the drop-down window, there's chat reference. This is what a person at the other end, a client, would see. They click on continue after they read some of the information about the hours of our service, and we're open Monday through Friday from 1 till 8 p.m. They then need to put in a password and their username and password. And then they'll get to this location where we're now interfacing with live assistants, and we're requiring a name, email, address, and telephone number, and then they click enter chat. Now, this often will come up as a message because there are no librarians available if they're outside of our hours. But this screen also gives the person a chance to click to send an email message or then to go ahead and close the window out. This is our reference desk center now. We have a traditional reference librarian, and then from 1 to 8 we also have an additional second person who is available to handle digital reference. This is what the screen looks like from the Librarian Operator Interface. This is what the librarian would also see as far as the screen, the information about the client or customer. And the librarian would hit enter chat. And then you'll see that this is now the screen that is viewed by our customer or client. You can see then that the information given that the librarian is there. And you can see that this would now scroll from top to bottom different as the answers and dialogue develops. Question is put into this box, and then the librarian now can see the transaction developing. This is an area where we have information about the client or customer. This is the status of that transaction, including the number of seconds that we have a person connected at the other end. We can have another second person call in and be waiting in the queue. We have a number of predefined quotes or scripts, if you will, that can be selected and then printed and put into the box here. And then as you see, the development of the dialogue here on the librarian's end from scrolling from bottom to top. Client here is interested in finding out some information about construction law. We then have their librarian respond and indicate that there are some titles that might be interesting to look at in our catalog. Again, then the patron would say that that's fine. The librarian then indicates that he or she is going to search our catalog and that they'll return in just a few moments. They've come back on this screen, this picture, the librarian, to indicate that a couple titles, even with the call numbers, have been selected. And then the client at the top would indicate that these look good. Now, one downside about loading as I did with a memory stick, it's the first time I've tried this, and many of my builds are not showing up today on these slides. So I'm sorry about that, but this is not the way that I rehearsed that. You just might remember it. You might better go with a CD to load. You'll see here, though, that the librarian is indicating that certainly you can stop by and pick up this material at our reference desk. But what I'm also asking our librarians to do is to indicate that we have some electronic materials available. And would they like to see that? Before they just say goodbye and that's the end, ask them that question at the very end. Would you be interested in seeing electronic material? And then they come back and say that they, in this case, would like to see that. A librarian then says that he's going to push a web page now, and a new browser window will open in a moment. And you can see at the top here that that's what we've done. We've pasted in that information by clicking on the open URL. Then we're able to push this document. And then you see the transaction here telling the patron that a window will open momentarily. And in fact, that's what happens. You'll see that in this slide that screen where we found some material in a construction labor report, if we open that up, we can actually then send that to our patron. One thing that I should have mentioned in the last screen is that we also send out a message about the licensing agreement that we have with that service with BNA. That's also sent at the same time to, in this case, it would be a law student or professor. That's where we restricted the service to now. Then here we've dropped the transmission, at least the client has. The transcript gets saved. And then we have a chance for the chat reference satisfaction survey to be developed. Now that's the basic program that we have with Live Assistance. One of the very most important features for me was that we keep this to as low amount of dollars that we could spend on it as possible. And it only costs $150 a month for a seat after we've had the initial startup charge of about $1,500. Okay.
Hello. Now that we're discussing virtual reference desk, I wanted to share with you what is coming next. Virtual reference desk started to become very important around 1999-2000. And now in 2003, there are many libraries, not just law libraries, but many academic libraries in the United States involved in that type of technology. And the trend seems to be increasing. And as the years progress, I think that most libraries will have it. There is a new emerging technology. It's been out only for 2 years, but it seems to be growing. And I predict that by 2010, it will be a major component of the virtual reference desk, and that is artificial intelligence. Now, why we want to consider artificial intelligence? Well, first of all, we got to think about marketing. Will artificial intelligence bring in more customers? Well, our generation might not consider that very important, but the people that are coming from behind, and they are already using artificial intelligence. And I'll show you a few examples in a moment. But also artificial intelligence can help us with retention. If the students feel that they are at home with this type of technology, they might be willing to use the library services more. Now, as you see over there, I have the future, fantasy, fiction, or fact. Easy fantasy to think about science fiction and virtual reference with artificial intelligence. Well, Ray Bradbury, author of the Martian Chronicles and author of many other books, was questioned about science fiction and why he thought about that. And he said, I write about fantasy I write about the impossible. Science fiction is the art of the possible, and artificial intelligence, to some degree, is part of the possible. The same question was asked to Ray Kurzweil, and he said that, and I quote, "We are entering a new era," and he called that era the singularity. And he explained that a singularity is a merger between human technology and machine intelligence that is going to create something bigger than itself. It's the cutting edge of evolution on our planet. And just in case you're wondering who is Ray Kurzweil, he was the principal developer of the first OmniFont optical character recognition, the first print-to-speech reading machine for the blind, the first CCD flatbed scanner, the first text-to-speech synthesizer, the first music synthesizer capable of creating the grand piano and other orchestral instruments, and the first commercially marketed large vocabulary speech recognition. This person is an expert in the field, so I take his words very serious. Now, not too long ago, I was at another conference, and I heard a librarian talk about different technologies. And he went through a long list. I remember there were 15 items. And then he got to the very last one, and he talked about teleportation. And anybody that's familiar with Star Trek would know that, beam me up, Scotty, that is quantum teleportation is the official name for that technology. And he said that was impossible and that will never happen. Of course, I was sitting in the other side, and I got very uncomfortable because I knew that a week before an article has been published proving that it was already possible, and there are like 6 scientists in the world right now developing quantum teleportation. Now, the reason I'm bringing this topic up is because with artificial intelligence is the same thing. It is coming. And I want you to be aware of it. Now, Pepsi Cola is already using artificial intelligence. And the name of the AI agent is called Lisa. And that, what you see written there is what they have in their website. So if you want to know more about Pepsi Cola and their product, you can go to the customer service page that they have, or you select Contact Us in their toolbar. It will give you several options. You can call, you can email, or you can chat with the virtual agent. As you can see, the list is pretty long. Coca-Cola has their own, Volkswagen, Dove for the soap, Ragus, Imes, if you have questions about your pet and what kind of food give it, the artificial intelligence will help you. Miller, for those of you that like the brew. I don't like the one from the District of Columbia, but if you have questions about taxes, the government at the District of Columbia is using an artificial intelligence agent. Arista Records, MTV, Xerox, L'Oreal. The government of Canada, believe it or not, is ahead of the United States when it comes to artificial intelligence. Most of the universities, especially in Quebec, they have adopted the technology, and the government of Canada itself is using artificial intelligence for transactions. And of course, for those of you who order books, Amazon.com is using it as well. Now, something interesting that I found is that eGain. eGain is a technology that powers both LSSI and 24/7. But what eGain has done is that they had added an artificial intelligence component. Now, libraries are not using that component yet, but when they sell this very same product to businesses, they acquire both the virtual reference and artificial intelligence. So I wanted you to be aware of that. There is one university in the United States right now using a virtual reference, and that is the library at Roger Morris University. And they have been working with that for 2 years now. Now, I hope this works. I have been working also on an artificial intelligence agent, so let's see if it doesn't make me look bad. I need to get to the keyboard. Well,
Hi there. My name is Aki, the Nethos Librarian Assistant.
now, let's suppose that I have a student that shows up at goes to the library website, but it's past midnight, and he finds the Convey software. It's always a little bit slow responding, but it gives you the response immediately at the bottom. Oh boy.
Convey Systems on-demand one-to-one web conferencing solution provides application sharing and collaboration, enhanced with voice and video, and supported by text chat that allows you to be remote and effective.
Now, in case you think that I went in, some of the questions, of course, were programmed into the system. The artificial intelligence unit already is sanctioned. It already knows how to communicate with people, but she doesn't know anything about Convey, so I had to teach her how to think and explain what Convey was. But if I would have asked something else, then yeah, all the answers that she's going to give in the next two questions, I had nothing to do with it.
Yes, I sure am alive. It's great to be alive, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, obviously they've taken all the time, so I'm out of luck on the process. But I would like to say one thing. Clearly, there are three groups of people here using different products, making the leap into virtual live reference. And I think what we'd like to at least respond to is, if this is going to work, if you read any of the articles out there, eventually you have to move to more 24/7. Yes, you can cover part of it, but really to get your students interested, to get them involved, those students need to have that access point. Clearly what we're looking at with the NOVA St. Thomas initiative is others who might be interested in joining us. So as you go back and think about it, clearly I think the future for us in these things to work is consortially. If we can build a consortium, get involvement, have across time zones, the coverage is not necessarily a lot of coverage by each institution, but small coverages can allow us to cover off, particularly for academic law libraries. Uniquely opportunity. There are other projects that once we start that consortially that might be out there, ideas that would allow us, we're all reinventing the wheel if you think about it. This gives us an opportunity to start from scratch and be involved in a project that won't allow us, but to start everybody reinventing the wheel. Can we take this process? Can we go forward? Can we make it work? Can we transform and use this to do other things in a consortium? There are some great articles on consortiums. You go back to Law Library Journal back in 1993, there are a series of articles on consortiums. Diane Klaver from NELCO, the former executive director, wrote an article just before she left, retired, talking about the need for a national consortium. I think we as academic law librarians need to think about that and what that means and what these types of projects can be done for us in that type of approach. Any questions? Please ask away. Go ahead.
What are your academic library statistics, usage statistics, over any given period of time, whether it's whether you keep them weekly, monthly, annually?
Nalco, do you have any statistics?
I think she's asking.
Okay.
She's a member of
Nalco.
NELCO.
Yeah, our statistics are very low because we've really just been pushing it with our 2 schools, and the time that we're doing it is daytime, not beyond. We're covering about 30 hours a week. We see spikes. For example, I used it in my class where I forced my students to actually have to respond to it, and we saw a market spike. So what we're looking at is how do we advertise it better among our students to get those spike ups. At this point, very low. But again, as we read the literature, until you make it 24/7 and it's ubiquitous, you have those sort of problems. People want to be able to know that anytime they want to click on a question. So that it's sort of a chicken and egg problem, I think, that is part of that process.
What kind of information are you retaining? You mentioned privacy issues, and I'm curious about the data that you're keeping that could conceivably be discoverable under, say, the USA Patriot Act or something like that. How are you handling those issues?
That's actually, I mean, right now the process is, I think it's on a 30-day strip out. Is that correct, 30 days? We retain, because there's also the issue of trying to do follow-up with patrons, too. You want to be able to follow up, and you want their email address, because the thing that maybe didn't come out was that if you have their email address, the transcript of your session with them will be emailed to them, and they'll have all the links and everything you told them right there, so they don't have to be frantically writing. So there's, we're trying to balance the privacy issues with that follow-up thing. So right now the system strips out, after 30 days, it strips out all the identifying information. It does maintain the transcript, the information that you might want to use in your reports later to do collection development if you see patterns emerging of things that you don't have or questions that are being asked. And so it keeps the transcript, but it strips out the identifying information after 30 days.
I think ours is 45 days.
I'm just a month, isn't it? Yeah, it's 30 days.
And I had one point to what you were just saying, Gordon. We're trying to get this tool to be used inside the library also. We've got a huge structure. When folks are on the 4th or 3rd or 2nd floor, 1st floor, they want to have some interaction with us, we've placed around information little bookmarks that tell them if you need some help from the reference desk, don't walk down to the 1st floor, just get on and check with us and we'll talk to you live on chat reference. And I think that we'll pick up some of that kind of business right inside our library also. We haven't had a lot of use, but we just came up the 3rd week finally of March. We were going into finals in April. But even in April, we had 14 different interactions, or at least contacts to our service, and I think that was pretty good for 2 or 3 weeks with very limited exposure and advertising.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this question is for anyone in the group. Are you using Westlaw Lexis? Are you answering questions about Westlaw Lexis, and are you using either of those services in trying to assist students?
Well, our policy, we developed a policy on this, and it's that we'll help them with Westlaw Lexis using their password, so that they have to log on with their password, and then we'll help them with that.
Right. And so can you also then as part of your software, can you actually then see what they're
Yes.
push information from Westlaw or Alexis once you log
Yes.
in?
Yeah, and with the Convey system, you have that same push technology. You can take over their computer, allow them into Westlaw under their password, go to where you were doing a search strategy for them, and then having gotten to where they want to be, they can just take over them, give it back to them, and allow them to go forward. And that's true with any of the databases that we subscribe to that are available through our proxy server or that. So aspect-wise, it does allow us to be able to push technology, and that's one of the things we think is an advantage. Also, because it appears up as a little button, anything that we've linked, so actually we've done a link with URL, in a sense, so students who are on Lexis through our university password, in essence, their Lexis password, that button shows up on their, once they've downloaded it, shows up while they're searching Lexis. So they can click to us, same with Westlaw, same with others. So you can create the link process so they have the button up there to talk to reference. And I think one of the motivating factors for us was we asked Westlaw and Lexis to give us statistics on their live reference. And we saw an increased usage of live reference on both of their services. So it's something our students are used to. It's something that they're expecting. It's a way they're dealing with it. The other aspect we haven't mentioned, but Convey is scalable. If you want to move to voice over IP, that's another way that you could do this. So you could actually talk, not just have to type in a type chat. The potentials are there for that. They also scalable up to video if you wanted to do video. I don't know where we take it, but those are options that we liked with the software that allowed us that opportunity. Mitch?
What is there a optimum size to use this technology as far as student body size, faculty size? Is it only really for the bigger schools, or is it a kind of a concept where if you build it, they will come?
Well, I think two things. One is I think that our students are expectationally, they're going to be used to seeing virtual chat. They're going to see it in Westlaw, they're going to see it in Lexis. That's the way they're going to be facing that process. So expectation, again, for us to be able to. And I think we underutilize our online catalogs. So if you have a vision of your online catalog as a source that should be then allowable, especially if you're building URL links into your catalog and you're taking that sort of approach, then this gives you an optimum. You're already facing the fact that students aren't coming into the library physically, but they still need help getting to what they need to get to. You now have that opportunity. But again, I see it as more of a consortium aspect that you may not be able to man a desk physically for 30, 40 hours a week. We may not be able to, but if we do a group sort of aspect of that each of us taking a small part could allow for that scale across time zones and across schools or smaller schools or Catholic schools as a grouping, if you're looking at that. I think there are all ways to see this as a sort of play out as a group. I don't think any one person can do it, but I think group-wise it could be a support.
Part of the consortium with St. Thomas and Nova?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Within the consortium framework, the member institutions, there are certain subscriptions that you all have in common, but there will also be unique things electronically. And if you aren't authenticating your users, when you decide to push a resource to them that's a subscription resource, how are you making sure that you're doing that within the license agreement?
Yeah, I mean, and actually under Convey, you do have some power to control so that people coming in by their password. I mean, we would have to look at more control that way by institutional, but Convey does recognize that aspect, so you can build it that way so that, but that is one of the problems you're going to have from a standpoint. I think more importantly is what institution. If I'm speaking as a librarian, do I have the ability to take them to a database that Nova might have that we don't? You know what I mean? And they're a Nova student. Is going to, but the system does allow you to set up some type of authentication. It's just a matter of looking at how you do it.
I was part of a public library consortium that did LSSI. The way we filled in those nighttime hours after 11 o'clock was we bought questions.
Right. Just so I can speak for Convey, Convey has linked with a company that you can buy service as well, and that's one of the things we're looking at that we might want to do. Right, and that's one of the things why we look at it from an academic library setup. You do have that advantage of if we could do some time zone crossing, that you might have some opportunity to work through those types of things. But I think you're right. I think where it's going to be used heavily is after hours. And you start seeing that. I don't know. I was sitting in a classroom presentation earlier today where they're talking about Blackboard, and the person put up their statistics of the usage in their class. It was amazing how much their usage of the class was 11 to 12, 12 to 1, 1 to 2 in the morning. You know, numbers that they were getting people on the system. So yes, I think there's that need outside the typical hours. Now, ideally, it might be nice if we could get University of Hawaii to join in, and they could take on some of those responsibilities for the East Coast.
But I think that's what's really powerful about the virtual reference is that it means that your reference services are available whenever your student, faculty member wants them. And so if our reference service is important and meaningful, then it really should be available whenever they have a need or want it. And how we go about doing that then is the next step.
Mark?
I think it's really laudable that you guys are doing what you're doing and giving us an opportunity to see this, learn from your experiences, and I hope you continue to do this and continue to sort of report back to it. My observation is looking at the different tools. You know, it's almost like there's a schizophrenic nature to it. You really can't necessarily mean, and I don't mean to throw in kind of negative cold water on the project at all. But if you think of what we do in a library as terms of helping a public patron quickly, efficiently distributing information as quickly as possible to this person, versus causing a light bulb to go off in another kind of person, a law student. You know, they're really different kind of things, and a single tool that might try to do both almost can't, because the better you are at just giving them the information, maybe the worse you are at causing the light bulb to go off. You know, so my heart goes out to you. I think it would be tremendously difficult to have a tool that did both of those things. And then the question to the group is, which of the products would do both the best? Handle both the general public as well as the student. You just want to train. You're not too concerned about distributing information.